Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Smite Draft League. Got a Divine Division matchup today coming your way between Stormcallers and Wild Inferno. Bringing you all the action, I am DoctahShru, joined here today by Suun. How you feeling going into this one, Suun?
It's going to be an exciting one right now. We've got a little bit of an interesting matchup right now. We've got Wild Infernos, who are seed number 4 right now. Meanwhile, Stormcallers, if they 2-0 this set, they will actually be the leaders of the set until the Kingslayers play their match. And if they win a single game, then it'll be tied once again for the lead. But if Stormcallers manage a 2-0 right now, they will be the top seeding in this division. So it's a lot on the line for them. And Wild Infernos are also, they've got a lot on the line as well. They're in the top half of the division right now, and they want to continue to be in the top half. So they want to put in a good performance for the set. So it should be a really good one.
Yeah, lots on the line for both teams. Should mean that they're playing on all cylinders and picking and banning on all cylinders, as well as Ganesh is the first taken off the board. A pick we've seen start to get like banned away or at least picked up early time and time again here.
Yeah, no, he's just such an incredibly safe support. It's very hard to catch this support out again because he can just dash through walls if he needs to, and he's very good about setting up and peeling for his team as well. Dharmic Pillars is great initiation for a lot of team fights, but you can also use it defensively if you're getting ran down. Which sometimes with some support picks, it's very difficult to have that versatility that Nesha can bring to his team, and with all of the setup and peel that he can bring on top of that. So he's a very strong support pick. So I always love seeing this ban uh, immediately at the beginning of the game. And of course, the Kali, the Wukong, the Bakasura, these are all gods that we have been seeing have monumental performances time and time again. And so it's not a surprise to me in the slightest to see these gods getting banned out alongside the Nesha.
Yeah, very standard. So which game kind of picks people have you bans to give necessarily. So sticking with the more meta choices and following that up with Thor junglers that Stormcallers just definitely don't want to see on the other side.
Yeah, that global pressure that he can bring in is definitely something that you just don't want to deal with whatsoever. So always great to see Thor getting banned out alongside some of these other gods, and also a very big flex pick as well. So you can flex it into a lot of different roles, and so teams like to do that and like to first pick that god just to have that flex potential. And a Terra ban coming out, Earthen Fury is just such a strong team fighting ultimate for both your team and against the opposing side. And so if you can get a really good Earthen Fury off in any engagement, you might be able to turn the fight with just that ultimate alone, and it's just a click of a button. There's not a whole lot of skill to that ability, but there's a lot of skill in the timing of that ability, which is the most difficult part. But we have seen time and time again that a lot of these support players at these different divisions do know when to use that ultimate and are using it very effectively. So I love to see that ban as well. And the Xbalanque getting first locked in for Stormcallers, a pick that we have been starting to see rising the ranks a little bit. A lot of people are starting to realize just how impactful this god's ultimate is, and he doesn't have a terrible time in lane in the early game like he used to.
Yeah, he brings a lot at kind of all phases
Wisdom
of the
shall
game
be
right
my
now. Branching
shield.
Bolas just absolutely hurts. And then, as you mentioned, turning off the lights just makes it hard when you don't know if someone's about to dive on you. You don't know where anybody is anymore. So, a good first pick lock in there for the Stormcallers. Wild Inferno, though, going to answer back with the Athena to add some global pressure to their side right off the bat.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. You got a little bit of global pressure from Xbalanque's ultimate with the Darkest of
Who will
Nights, and then you've
rise
got
above
the
the
Defender of
rest?
Olympus with a little bit of global pressure as well. And now you've got Discordia's passive being able to give one of your teammates some extra power. So I mean, that's kind of global in a sense. Not
Yeah.
to mention the Golden Apple of Discord can go pretty far on the map. I wouldn't necessarily call it global though, but it can also be it can also go quite the distance like some of these other abilities. So Disco,
I am ready.
I love Disco. I think she's incredibly strong. She can just give so much benefit to anybody on your team who is having a phenomenal early game to continue to give them a phenomenal early game thanks to her passive. And not to mention that late game when she rolls around, she can do a lot of damage and she's going to be spamming her abilities quite often. So it very strong mid lane pick and incredibly safe in the early game as well. So it's very easy for her to get to late game. So always love to see her.
Yeah, and she brings such good setup for her team as well with that strife.
Right.
She can set up for herself or for teammates. Definitely a strong mid lane pick. And Stormcallers are going to answer back with a Naja and a Kuzenbo for themselves. Naja, a pick that has been also rising recently. I've seen him a ton in the jungle. And, you know, you speak of setup for the disco. Well, that's basically Naja's entire kit. It's just great setup for the team.
And it can be kind of scary if Darkest of Nights gets flicked and you don't know where this Neja is. Anybody on the map at any moment could all of a sudden be in danger of being taken up into the Windfire Wheels. So it could be really scary. So a really solid pick, and I'm expecting some type of a burst mage or high damaging mage that can help follow up off of that. Merlin getting banned out, not necessarily a burst mage, but is a shred mage, can shred somebody upon their landing, especially if they're getting sumo slammed into a wall afterwards. So really, I do like the Merlin ban coming out, but Wild Inferno also round off the first half of their picks with a Hachiman lock-in. We've been seeing this god time and time again. Very strong ADC and somebody that can help match that little bit of early pressure that we've been seeing some X balls be getting recently.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems like after the initial buff to him, no amount of nerf is taking him away from, you know, top 3 worthy here in the ADC role. Definitely like seeing them pick that up. Last ban coming through for Stormcallers is the Susano to pair up with that Fenrir that they took away. You know, I'm just now noticing there is no Raven picked or banned away here on either side. Both teams still need their solo laner. How did we make it to the second phase of picks with Ravana just free?
That's a great question. You know, one other god I don't see is Marty, but I believe that this game was played
He's
immediately after he got banned. So this was played recently. So because of that, Marty is off the table and no teams can pick it up because of his invisibility bug in the game right now. So, but I believe this game was just played after the patch.
Mhm.
So, but we got our solo or our jungle pick coming out for Wild Inferno right now, and I would love to see a solo pick coming in right now. You can already guarantee your jungle pick because the Neja is already locked in, and so lock in your solo laner. Pick some type of comfort pick, maybe something that's pressure that can
The
do very
law
well with
returns to
that
this
disco.
land.
I was thinking tier or Kakulin, and the tier does get locked in, so that's something that can really benefit with that Discordia passive early because tier has to kind of spam his abilities early, but if you can ever catch somebody out in that fearless in the early over there in the short lane, you can rack up that damage very quickly, you being able to hit him with the cleaver immediately after, and then go ahead and start racking up some damage, get that disco passive, and keep it in the early game and kind of snowball that lane a little bit. So,
Yeah, I mean, Wild Inferno kind of have a terrifying frontline combo. If Tyr gets around behind you and Fearless is 1, 2, multiple
oh yeah,
people into the team, and then they get hit by an Athena taunt, that's a long time where if you don't have beads, you just don't get to play the game. I like this comp coming out of Wild Inferno so far.
yeah, absolutely. And we saw Cthulhu hover for a split second there, but now we're seeing the Nike hover coming out
Now is
for
the
Stormcaller
time.
solo laner, and we go ahead and get that locked in. I like this pick. Nike cannot be displaced when she's using her 2. She cannot be displaced when she's using her Rend. And so that's 2 abilities that cannot be fearless. So a really great counter coming out immediately right there. And so that's something to keep an eye out. But looks like they're not actually done yet. They're still looking at this Cthulhu. Is this a
But
Cthulhu mid we're gonna see?
I mean, I loved Cthulhu Mid when he first came out, but I don't know about anymore. Artemis getting hovered instead. Stormcallers are either just having some fun with their hovers or they are
Let
really
the
cooking
hunt
something up right
begin.
now. Wow.
And Artemis goes ahead and gets locked in. So I like Artemis personally. I think she's way better in support than any other role, but that's just me. So, but
Kuzenbo mid?
I expect this to be an X ball mid this game. I expect Hunter to be piloting that one in the mid lane. X ball's very safe, very good clear. Artemis kind of needs to get some solo farm and not have a ton of pressure on them at a lot of the stages in the game to have an impact. So I expect that to kind of be off in its own little island over there in the duo side. And so I will be expecting an X ball mid, but I could be proven wrong. Who knows? Maybe they are playing the Artemis mid this game.
This is one tail you
Yeah,
don't
I
want to
mean,
chase, darling.
I didn't expect to see an Artemis at all today. So, you know, I have no idea where she could possibly go. Stormcallers picking a spicy last pick there. I'm excited to see how it works. And on the other side, Wild Inferno are going to pick up the Circuit for themselves in that jungle. Now they have another way to taunt in the members of the Stormcallers. Their setup on this team is kind of criminal.
Yeah, they have really great ways of being able to initiate into these team fights. You've got the Athena dash, you've got the dash taunt, and then you've got Blink Fearless coming out from the tier. You've got a Blink taunt coming out from the Circuit with the Cobra's Kiss, and there's a lot of scary things, and not to mention the lockdown as well. There's a lot of ways of being able to just hold somebody in one spot. With you got the root from Disco, you've got Lawbringer being able to ult it on top of people, you've got Circuit's ultimate as well, and so a lot of ways to hold somebody in one place after pulling them in towards your team. So it can be really
Mhm.
scary if you step up anywhere near them, especially if you have an immobile Artemis on the opposite side. It's going to be incredibly difficult to keep this Artemis away from all these ways of being able to initiate unless you're positioning like crazy or setting up some beautiful traps.
Yeah, and there's going to be so much pressure on the beads of every member on the Stormcallers team. But let's hop into game one here and see how it all plays out between the Stormcallers and Wild Inferno. Welcome into game number one, everybody. We have a Artemis in the mid lane. We officially can say now Hunter is piloting that one, starting with Bluestone in what I imagine will be a Transcendence here, son. Is that what you expected to see from an Artemis in the mid lane?
I personally like ability based or like power based Artemis, so I'm not too surprised by that. She can do a lot of damage with the ability based ADC kit, and you are playing the mid lane, so you will still have that auto attack based ADC over there in the long lane. So it's not necessarily something you have to worry about not having, as if like you ran a mage over there in the long lane. But because you have a more traditional auto attack based Hunter over there in the long lane, it makes a little bit more sense to go the more power and burst oriented Artemis build.
Yeah, I mean Tusky's gonna hurt if you build up that ability, the ability power on the Artemis. Do you think? I mean, is this just gonna be Marticarous build, but on an Artemis instead?
You know, I really hope not, just because I just don't like that god, so I don't like thinking about that god. So a little bit of a scuffle here in mid, but nothing too worried about. But yeah, maybe we could potentially see that, absolutely. So Marty's build gives a lot of value to Marty's kit, so I wouldn't be surprised if we potentially see a Soul Eater being built, you know, second or third, like we typically see out of the Martys in the mid lane, and so that wouldn't be too surprising for this Artemis pick. But you do have a lot of setup with your team as well, so maybe double stacking in the early game wouldn't be the most effective for this pick. I feel like you can get a lot of extra damage off by just building kind of like a jungler in a sense, more than like a mid Marty.
Mm. Well, I'm excited to see where Hunter decides to take his build. Looking elsewhere, I didn't quite notice as we might see a little bit of a scuffle here in the dual lane, but just some poke on both ways. This is a quad physical comp coming out of the Stormcallers as well. Their only magical damage is that Kuzenbo. Is that gonna? Do you think that's gonna hurt them the further we go into this game with the ease of itemization Wild Inferno's gonna have?
I wouldn't be surprised if we just see an Archdruids being built in potentially jungle and on the Nike in the solo lane to get a little bit of extra magical in-hand damage by getting those auto attacks off after using your abilities. And so you'll get a little bit of extra magical damage from that. It won't be a ton, but actually a solo kill over there on the right-hand side. And this is kind of what I was talking about on the desk. If you can start to snowball a bit of a lead with tier and you can get a lot of damage off early, you will have that Disco passive if you have top damage. If we want to go ahead and pull up that top damage real quick, maybe this tier has it already and is already utilizing that passive. And sure enough, we do see it right there. And so with that passive can put a lot of extra pressure because the passive scales power off of what level you are. So already has top damage, and if it keeps that top damage and continues that pressure up over there in that solo lane, this Nike could be in a world of hurt.
Yeah, and I mean, you add the Bluestone to it, and just the fact that, you know, Tyr is a stance switcher and can just hit you with ability after ability. It's definitely problematic for, you know, Cairo here on this Nike, but still a god that can fight back from behind. So not the end of the world, just dropping first blood there for the Stormcallers. They have ways back into it. Taking a look at, you know, the support matchup here between these two gods. I mentioned the 4 physical that are coming out of the Stormcallers. It looks like TeachLikeADad has recognized that and might be going into the Sovereignty first overall.
Yeah, definitely going to be seeing a lot of aura items coming out from TeachLikeADad. More than likely, I would expect the Sovereignty to be locked in and be pretty quickly on, just to make sure to give those extra protections to the teammates whenever you're in range of them against this 4 physical comp. And that'll help your teammates in the early game in any of these scuffles, especially as we can see them fighting over that gold buff. And actually over there, they're going to go ahead and go in over here on this tower, but I don't know if they can get a kill here.
They're going to look for it, but they get double taunted in. A little bit of damage getting returned onto them as well. Solo laners continuing to poke each other out and go back and forth. A little bit of a level lead over here for the tier. The junglers nearby should have been useful, but not wanting to take the fight to the Nike, who's just so hard to deal with, especially now that she's hit level 5.
Yeah, still had the leap, so was still incredibly safe. Didn't really have to worry about the Serket coming in. Yes, you did have Serket and tier ultimates, but hold that thought, Windfire Wheels.
That's a lot of damage onto a Discordia, who dashes away, but it's not enough. Hunter will get credit for that kill in the mid lane. Getting an Artemis off to a good start is a scary thing if you're on the side of Wild Inferno.
Yeah, sometimes when you get taken up into that Windfire Wheels, you kind of get disoriented a little bit as to which direction you're looking at, because as soon as Venom landed back down from that ultimate, immediately was facing the wrong direction, leaped in aggressively. Speaking of aggressively, another gank coming on.
Cairo could be in trouble right now, does not have the ultimate, and there's even more pressure coming this way. Athena comes in, and TeachLikeADad will get credit for the kill using that Defender of Olympus to make sure the solo laner falls.
That's what we call in the books the all me. You just go ahead and click an ability, and then, you know, just some time runs by, but you get the last hit, so that's just you. You did all the damage. You earned it. Nice job, TeachLikeADad. We love to see those plays coming out.
Yeah, that's the power of the Athena, right? Those early and often rotations that can just, be impactful anywhere on the map. There's nothing that HardKiller can do to match that on the Kuzenbo.
Yeah, it's very difficult for a Kuzenbo to be rotating around early, but speaking of rotating around early, Hunter's kind of behind a tier 1 tower right now, but Venom accidentally stepped into that trap, so Hunter might actually be out here.
It looks like he is. Great trap placement and unfortunate feet placement for Venom there, unable to follow up. That's very aggressive, especially in a god like Artemis this early into game, to be roaming the enemy jungle.
You did have both your relics. I mean, well, granted, Horn Shard isn't really a relic necessarily, but you did have beads, you did have the ultimate, you did have your Horn Shard, so you were relatively safe in that moment. But if there was a Serket that walked around the corner, you may have been as good as dead right there. So it is a little bit of aggressive pathing coming out from Huntor, trying to get that kill over there on the green buff, and does end up doing so. So there is, or maybe not. It says it's there on the ground on the map, but doesn't actually look like it, because it looks like TeachLikeADad actually has it. No, it was stolen away. So there we go. And so did actually end up working out right there. So good for Hunter on that rotation.
Yeah, high risk, but high reward. Gets that extra XP, steals it away. I like the play out of the Artemis here. Voltcha sash just off the march. Good dash coming from TeachLikeADad there. And we saw a bit of fireworks in the first couple minutes, but kind of slowed down here as we approach the 7-minute mark of this game so far. Still early, obviously, but if we make it late, as we so often see in the Season of Souls, we get to that true late game point at like 40 minutes or so. Is there a team you feel like has the upper hand? I might have to hold that thought on the question, though, is GettinCawky. He's taking a lot of damage. Has the Darkest of Nights, though, to buy some space. Does manage to make it out there safely. There's a lot of damage coming out of from Dracull on this Hachiman.
Yeah, Wing Shard was expelled as well, so alt for alt and Wing Shard expelled for the Stormcallers ADC GettinCawky, and did manage to get out, so good for them, but actually they're not done over here.
They are not. Windfire Wheels used, but so was the Watery Grave. Does not matter, though, as Voltcha will put the Serket onto the grayscale, adding another kill to the tally for the Stormcallers.
A little bit difficult to know that there was a Neja just around the corner when you were taunting in that Kuzenbo trying to contest that gold buff, but an unfortunate fall there early for Fiji, but not necessarily the biggest lead coming out from Voltcha right now in the jungle. Only about a half a level lead coming out, but as you can see that Fiji actually has more items right now, so it looks like that Voltcha hasn't recalled in a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see when that ends up happening. But Defender of Olympus is coming in.
It is never a true 1v1 if Athena's in the lobby, and GettinCawky is learning that the hard way. Has to use the beads, does immune out the taunt, and with the help from his squad, he's actually going to be able to make it out of there, retreating to the tier 1 tower. Close, but no cigar for the Wild Inferno on that kill attempt.
Great call-outs coming out from Stormcallers saying, hey, rotate high, come to us. We can peel you out in this engagement, especially with how TeachLikeADad was positioned after that Defender of Olympus came in, was down the lane from GetCawky, so couldn't go down the lane, otherwise you're just going to be walking into that. And Fiji might actually be walking into 2 players right here. Huntor ulting.
Oh, that's a lot of damage. Uses the ult of his own to try and immune it out, and will be able to live. The apple lands onto the support, but the Kuzenbo pretty tanky and doesn't mind the damage that much. But a lot's getting traded back and forth. Another good trap. It seems like Hunter definitely understands this Artemis kit and is very comfortable on this god.
I love what Wild Inferno is doing right now. They are using their initiations to make their way around the map, looking for these active early game plays onto Stormcallers to try and find some early picks. Unfortunately, neither of those picks went their way just now on GetCawky or on Huntor, but they are making these active plays and they're not afraid to use their buttons, to use their ultimates, and that's what we love to see. We gotta see this team that has great initiation and great setup setting the pace, trying to start all the fights in order to get off to a good start in this game. And kind of going back to what you were mentioning earlier of which team kind of has the upper hand late game, well, I think if Wild Inferno continues to set the pace, their comp should be able to do a fantastic job late game as long as they set the pace and have a keep it relatively even. If they can keep it around where it's at right now, where there are only 200 difference between them, then Wild Infernos have a great chance of being able to keep this game in their hands. But actually, GetCawky over here gets a potential solo kill. Voltcha was in range, so I'm not sure if this was a true solo kill, but maybe it was a jungle gank coming over here. But on the opposite side of the map, there's a gank on solo.
Pyro in a lot of trouble, and it's a 3-man rotation again. Defender of Olympus lands, but it's a good leap. Lawbringer, though, is better, and that is the setup and the initiation that this Wild Inferno team has. They will get that kill, but Stormcallers say, you can have our solo laner. We're going to take an 11-minute Gold Fury and just get that one without any contention coming from Wild Inferno.
Really nice job listening to the call on Cairo right there. Cairo was definitely like, hey, I'm once again dying to a 3-person gank. Do something. And the team listened and went straight to Gold Fury. And they have enough damage with this double Hunter composition, so they got to just shred that objective very quickly with no contention of Wild Inferno.
Oh, that's beads forced out onto Dracull after the blink in from Voltcha there. So taking away that extra layer of safety. And with Beacon spawning in the next 45 seconds, Dracull rotating over to help fight over it. He's gonna have a lot harder time now to stay safe in the fight. But here comes Tusky getting the beads out of Venom as well, answered back by the golden apple, but it's off the mark. It seems like even though Beacon's not here yet, these teams want to scrap. They are definitely comfortable taking these fights at any given moment.
Yeah, and Hunter playing very aggressively on this Artemis support, even with all these players around, and actually beads expelled.
In a lot of trouble because the beads was already used, but lives with a sliver of HP. The tick damage, though, from Fiji is enough to get that kill. And that will certainly be important because the beacon is spawning right now, and already there are 4 members of Wild Inferno here. No one from the Stormcallers. Looks like they're going to step up unless Voltcha decides to get in there, but they'll give that one up for free, not wanting to fight it. I also love that you called Hunter the Artemis support, because I can definitely see that you like her in that role, huh?
Oh yeah, no, she she does a fantastic job of just being able to set up and peel out people, and not she's got she's got great movement speed to be able to zoom around the map, which a lot of supports like to have. She's got traps, being able to root cripple people in place. Her ultimate has over a second long stun, so just an incredibly great character for it. And not to mention, you can build full tank, and as long as people are being hit by a CC, you are dealing more damage thanks to her passive. So you can still be a little effective in the damage department. And you could be marking people with like Xe, being able to get those physical protection shred on those individual gods. and so that can still be benefiting your team as well. So she's a very strong supporting character, and we might need some support over here in the long lane.
Yeah, Dracull could definitely use some support, but he's surrounded by 3, taken up into the sky by Windfire Wheels. Does get a good amount of support, but will still end up falling. But they could turn around more damage than they bargained for the Stormcallers here. Voltcha does live with a sliver of HP, and the damage from the Circuit is not quite enough to get a kill. Has to use all the mobility to get away. And what looks like for a moment would have been Wild Inferno answering back for that rotation onto Dracull. Stormcallers just able to slip the noose there.
Yeah, I think Fiji's ultimate was not up in time. We saw that last breath get used on the tail end of that, but if that ultimate was used under tower, we definitely saw a kill coming out on whoever Fiji ended up grabbing between Voltcha and HardKiller. But I don't think it was up from the Artemis gank in mid lane around that beacon spawn. And so because of that, unfortunately, not great usage of the last breath, and we're not able to pick up a kill right there, but a great counter rotation to at least try and get something for the fact that their Hunter has fallen once again over there under tower.
Yeah, Dracull not having the best of early games so far, but hasn't fallen too far behind quite yet, just maybe a level or half a level or so behind. But Voltcha's here again over here in this left lane, trying to set up for a gank, but it seems like Dracull has sniffed him out and is going to play safe underneath the tower. Might lose his purple buff depending on how long Voltcha decides to stay over on that left side of the map.
And is actually rotating back over. Meanwhile, over here, Wild Inferno is actually pulling Pyromancer and doing a great job of just go ahead and disengage that when the Watery Grave gets expelled.
Yeah, good use of that. Getting dove underneath a tier 2 tower is Dracull. Nowhere is safe for this Hachiman as Pyromancer does end up getting leashed, and neither team will pick that one up. We're definitely seeing smart decisions out of both of these teams so far, and it's made it so that the game here 15 minutes in is almost extremely even. I mean, just 700 gold is not a whole lot between these two teams.
Yeah, but in that gank we just saw over there on the left-hand side, we saw Darkest of Nights, we saw the Windfire Wheels expelled, and Dracull had to expel the ultimate, had to expel the beads, and had to expel the Aegis. And not a great situation when you've already lost your tier 1 tower and you've already had so much pressure over there in the long lane. It's not the greatest position that you want to be in if you are this Hachiman.
Definitely not. I struggle a bit, you know, on this pick if you're down as far as he is, maybe a level and a half now, and it might be even more struggle as once again Cairo is just rotated on the Defender of Olympus getting used by TeachLikeADad, and they are just sitting on this Nike in the solo lane.
It's very difficult for this Nike to get back into this game. Like 0-4 at the beginning of this game. Does have some very good player damage, so is putting in a lot of damage, but with Tier's really good sustain in lane, the amount of rotations and ganks that have been coming out, and the fact that this Tier has Disco passive, so has even more damage on top of the build that they have already have this game. I mean, we can already see the spikes coming out. We've got the Glad Shield as well, and we got Bluestone. All of those give you a little bit of extra damage on top of Disco's power passive for you. It's very difficult laning matchup over there. And now there's a 3-level deficit coming out from Cairo over there in the solo lane. And so I like this play from Cairo. You're not getting a lot of value over there in the solo lane, so try and make an active play around the second beacon spawn and try and get this one for your team.
Yeah, Stormcallers are here in force for this next beacon, and Hunter is the target of aggression from Wild Inferno. Has to use the ultimate there to stay safe. Watery Grave used as well, but the level 17 tier has rotated into this fight and is doing quite a bit of work. GettinCawky will get 1 kill, but it's answered back by Indigo on the tier. The beacon starts to get channeled and leveled up here by Wild Inferno, but GettinCawky's in the middle of a few members, has to use the beads and Aegis to try and get out, but it's still taking so much damage on the back. It's a rampage for Indigo as he picks up another kill in this engagement. And Cairo is still stalling out the beacon, but there are 4 members of Wild Inferno in his way. Needs to be very careful underneath here. So does the Kuzenbo. They do push 1 back towards the tower, but it's Indigo who does not care one bit. Back and forth goes this fight, but it's just got the feeling that Wild Inferno are the ones in control. But Cairo stalled this out for long enough that backs have had to go through for Wild Inferno. They're unable to stick on this beacon because of this Nike, who actually gets a kill onto Dracull. Good use of the shield ultimate there, but the rotation and the respawns come back for Wild Inferno, but so does Tusky. Seems like this fight around the beacon is just not gonna end, but the damage on to Voltcha is too much, and Venom will get credit for that kill. Cairo still sustaining on this beacon, finally has to run away and has good peel coming from the Kuzenbo, but Beacon, after a extended fight, does go the way of Wild Inferno.
This fight might actually be done. Huntor taunted in and getting taken out by Venom right there. GettinCawky also losing half the HP right there as well. And now it looks like Wild Inferno is actually starting to look at this Pyromancer a little bit. I feel like this is a little bit of bait. I don't know if they actually think they can do this, but they are kind of shredding it. It's already down to half HP, and the only person that's in range is Cairo coming up the map right now.
He uses the blink for it, but gets taunted in. The Pyromancer still very low. Good knock up. Stormcallers. Cairo got the Pyromancer in a 1v3. You thought it might have been a bait, and maybe it should have been, because Cairo just walks up and says, thanks very much for a runic bomb.
Yeah, Cairo, great use of the TP, being able to rotate back in very quickly to get that. And with that, now Pyro in hand for Stormcallers, so they lose the beacon, but they do end up securing or stealing the Pyromancer on the tail end of that engagement. So fantastic look for them right there. But this team fight, I want to go back and talk about this extended team fight that we saw. We saw Cairo get Sentinel of Zeus twice in that engagement. It started off the engagement, and then we saw it get a kill on the tail end, near the tail end of that engagement, right when the rest of Wild Inferno's reinforcements came back from base. And so that's not necessarily the shortest of ultimates. So it was quite a long engagement, and Primal Fury's already down to half, and Dracull's the only one in range, but elected to not take that one. So another objective going the way of Stormcallers. They just got Pyro and they just got Primal, and so they are definitely still in this game, even though it seems like Indigo is the one that is setting the pace for this game. We saw just how much value this tier had in that team fight around the beacon spawn. Did a fantastic job of being able to put in a lot of damage and a lot of setup for the team with all those fearlesses and power cleaves that were going on. It looked incredibly difficult for GettinCawky and Huntor to deal with this tier in the backline.
Yeah, both of these teams definitely have the strong members on their side, and that engagement that just went on for so long is definitely proof of that both of these teams are fairly even right now in this game, and the gold also shows that. Voltcha, though, could be in trouble, but Tusky comes out as well as the Windfire wheels to bring up Fiji, but when he lands, he still could be in even more trouble, but Huntor gets the kill onto Fiji, up down from TeachLikeADad with the Defender of Olympus, just needs to make it out, and now, as I said, they were even. Stormcallers answer back and get a good pick there. They're starting to pressure towards this mid-tier 1, but we'll realize might be a little greedy because Indigo's here, blink in, and Voltcha's absolutely getting melted. Good sash to immune out some of the damage, but it might be too much. He gets to live Lawbringer, not enough. Voltcha escapes and gets a kill onto Dracull. This Naja is just a master at maneuvering through these team fights.
Yeah, and Indigo is getting pushed under tower right now, and it looks like Stormcallers still want to take this fight, but a really great confound coming out.
It is indeed. Lots of damage going on to Killer. And once again, it's a back and forth engagement. One kill going the way of Stormcallers. And it looks like we got a quick pause here in this game. So we're going to cut to the desk real quick as we wait for the players to fix the lobby here. This game is so close. I mean, it's close in gold. The team fights are close every time. We don't normally see games that are this neck and neck the entire way through.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy just how close this game is here. We're around like 21, 22 minutes into this game right now. And it seems like some objectives have been going the way of Stormcallers, but it also feels like that Wild Infernos are the ones that are winning these engagements. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic between the two teams and how much they're clashing like that. And with that clashing coming out, it's making for some really great Smite games. We do see Stormcallers does have the lead right now, but in gold, but that's basically just one Gold Fury, and they've taken 2 this game. So Wild Infernos are keeping it incredibly close, even though they're not getting any of these objectives. And they're still managing to set the pace even though they're behind.
Yeah, I mean, this is such an interesting dynamic. And you know, speaking of objectives, we're 22 minutes into this game, as you mentioned now. Fire Giant starting to become a thing that both of these teams are definitely going to be thinking of, definitely going to be looking towards. Is there a team you feel like has the upper hand around this biggest objective on the map?
It all kind of comes down to the initiation from Wild Inferno. Again, we've been seeing their initiation paying dividends in all of these engagements and really being able to bring a lot as setup for the team. And Stormcallers, though, they do have the kind of DPS and shred in order to take the Fire Giant. So if Wild Inferno potentially lose an engagement or have to reset because they're all very low on the HP departments, well, Stormcallers have the damage and DPS in order to shred down this objective. So they could very easily take it for themselves if they end up getting a pick, and maybe they're looking at Indigo right here.
They are the tier surrounded by multiple members of Stormcallers, but has rotations coming in. Wingfire Wheels will lift him up into the air and bring him back down. He has the Lawbringer though, but he's taking a lot of damage on the back end. Tusky flies through this fight as well. Low health bars for Wild Inferno, but they're able to escape for the time being as the apple will tickle the Kuzenbo just a little bit. But look at the health bar of Huntor as well. He needs to be careful backing there because Fiji is nearby, but it seems like the Artemis will be able to return to base safely. And once again, it's a team fight where a lot of buttons are pressed, but no kills happen just yet as Defender of Olympus comes through to maybe change that. A lot of damage still going on to the front line of Stormcallers, but they're able to get back underneath the tower, and no blood is spilt in the mid lane.
Indigo had so many ultimates expelled onto him and managed to just walk into mid lane and heal off some waves. And actually, they're going in and continuing this engagement.
A double taunt kicks things off, and Cairo's in trouble, but so is Voltcha, who has to use that Windfire Wheels just for safety. And Cairo as well, needing to use his ultimate defensively before jumping over that wall, which means this Pyromancer that kind of started off the fight here will go the way of Wild Inferno. No one able to get in there and steal it away this time.
And Indigo is still here. Did not elect to go teleport, so did not back and teleport back in and is back down to half HP. No, has been here the entire time after all of those ultimates were used on Indigo. And now with the Titan falling right now and this Oni Fury being up and Stormcallers having to deal with this Titan walking up the mid lane, they might not be able to rotate in, but actually Wild Inferno aren't looking for the Oni Fury, they're looking for the fight.
They want to push with their Titan and find what they can find. A taunt in gets out Tusky and Watery Grave from both members of Stormcallers who are here. All the while, the Titan gets rid of the mid-tier 1 tower, so one structure down. Now there are more members of Stormcallers around, and they will burn away the remaining health of this Wild Inferno Titan. Not before it walks underneath the tower, and it's allowing Wild Inferno to get aggressive underneath this tier 2 tower. A good taunt as well, but TeachLikeADad's taking a lot of damage until this tier jumps into the backline. So much peel, but kills are going the way of the Stormcallers elsewhere. That is 2 in their favor as Fiji and Dracull fall, and Venom might be the next as he's stuck in the middle of 3 people, gets slowed by the Scintilla Zeus, and will end up falling. That's a double kill for the Xbalanque of GettinCawky.
Both the frontliners of Wild Inferno initiated way too deep behind the tier 2 tower, and since they ulted in so incredibly deep behind the tier 2 tower, looking for this Hunter, they just left their backliners all to fend for themselves. And when there's a Nike, a Neja, and also this Xbalanque that's looking at them, they were just able to shred down this backline and pick them all off and go ahead and take that Oni Fury for themselves, all for the cost of a tier 1 tower. And that is a great look for Stormcallers. Wild Inferno's frontliners just a little bit too disconnected from what the actual call was. It seems like the call was to look for the kills, but they should have been looking to help their backliners in the process as well.
Yeah, definitely a miscommunication there in their team, and it's led to the Stormcallers being up around 5 or so K in the lead here 27 minutes into the game, which is going to help them around this Fire Giant fight. And we can see the grouping already towards this right side of the map. Stormcallers positioning around this pit and getting ready to take this. You mentioned before that it needs to be an initiation from Wild Inferno. Who do you think they need to prioritize to start these fights off?
They just need to get any pick that's stepping up. There's this Nike stepping up right now. There's 4 surrounding it. Taunt this Nike right now and look to burst her down. Yes, you can get that Sentinel of Zeus out early, and that can bring a lot of value to you and a lot of safety to your backline come the rest of the team fight after the fact. So if you can expel that early and force a TP coming out from this solo laner, that is a lot already expelled for a tank very early on.
Well, Indigo's going to kick things off with a good Fearless onto Kyra, who does take quite a bit of poke damage and gets taunted in as well, but will be okay at around half HP, and does, as you mentioned, have that teleport of not quite available yet. 38 seconds until that relic will come off of cooldown, but is tanking enough on the Nike to be okay for the time being. Is actually going to use the back, so Wild Inferno have a little bit of a window here should they want to go for something.
Yeah, but they're not entirely sure that this window has been opened because they had no vision that this Nike was resetting, and they're not enough people are walking forward looking like they want to. They got 3 people in mid right now dealing with that mid wave, but in the process over here, we got 2 over here on the right lane looking at one of these ADCs, but actually they're the ones being looked at.
They are. Indigo getting shoved against the wall, but has a great Fearless, and the Defender of Olympus gets stunned by Tusky, though. Up downs with the Lawbringer, feeling himself on this tier because he knows he has the support of his team. There's a lot of damage going on to the TeachLikeADad's Athena, and the crits are too much. GettinCawky will get credit for that kill onto the support for Wild Inferno, and that's allowing the Stormcallers team to push up and get aggressive in the jungle, but they don't want to chase too deep. Instead, just starting up this Fire Giant. Ring is up, health bar below half HP, and it doesn't look like anybody, save maybe Fiji, is going to be able to get close enough to even contest it, and they don't. Stormcallers pick that up. Voltcha gets a kill for himself as well. And this is just exactly what the Stormcallers were looking for.
Again, if Stormcallers manage to get a footing around this Fire Giant, like I had mentioned just a few moments ago, they have the DPS to annihilate that objective, and we saw just that. Wild Inferno step back for what seemed like 10, 15 seconds, and the Fire Giant had already fallen. And it's not EFG. They still had to wait another like 30-ish seconds after taking the objective to get EFG, but it doesn't matter. Mid Phoenix is already gone.
Just deleted, and Indigo might be the next to follow. He's taken up into the sky, lands with not a lot of HP left, and GettinCawky will get the shutdown onto the tier. Voltcha will get the kill onto TeachLikeADad, and it's just Dracull and Fiji left to try and defend this Titan. They are retreating towards the fountain, but Dracull can't make it, and now it's Fiji versus the world as the Titan burns, the Titan melts, and the Titan will end up falling, but not before it kills Killer. But that first game goes the way of the Stormcallers after a very back and forth set. Stormcallers just kicked on and, like, you know, hit the gas and just went for it right there at the end of it. It seemed like nothing was going to stop them.
Yeah. What I think brought a lot to this team was this double Hunter that they elected to pick. They didn't have the traditional mage like we had mentioned on the desk or at the very start of the game. And with these double Hunters, they were really able to just shred anybody that gets CC'd in front of them. We saw a normal traditional Hunter build coming out for this X Ball. We saw the Executioner getting built on the X Ball, and with that, you are shredding the physical protections of anybody you are auto attacking, and the branching bullas count as well. So anybody getting hit by the branching bullas or getting hit with just the regular auto attacks are losing physical protections because of that. And then, like I had mentioned, we saw a jungle-ish style Artemis build coming out, where we saw a Heartseeker, we saw a Titan's Bane, we saw I believe, a Jotuns as well. And so with that coming out from this Artemis, was able to really output a lot of burst damage on top of the fact that you are still a late game Hunter with a lot of power. So even though you're not auto attacking very quickly, your auto attacks still hurt a lot. And
Yeah.
anybody that got CC'd in front of them felt just how much with these 2 Hunter picks. And we saw, again, with these 2 Hunter picks as well, we saw that tier 2 Phoenix and Titan fall incredibly quickly there at the end of that game.
Yeah, their structure shred was just insane with this comp, and they played it to perfection there at the end. On the other side, though, Wild Inferno had a lot of moments where they looked really good as a team. Great initiations. I mean, Indigo looked unkillable on that tier for the longest time. Only died once in the entire game. Like they definitely have the pieces there to try and upset the team that's currently undefeated in the Stormcallers right now.
Yeah, they definitely looked like they were able to take a game right there. So if this is Wild Infernos and they just lost, it was an incredibly close game one. They are still feeling themselves. They're like, "Hey, shrug it off. We literally only lost the last like 3 minutes, 4 minutes of that game, not even. And it was even up until that point, and then the fire giant fell, and then once the fire giant fell, the game pretty much ended immediately after. And so if I'm Wild Inferno, I'm like, it's no big deal. Sure, they got the first game of the set, but we can easily take them in game number two and easily be able to take a game off them and potentially the rest of the set as well if they can find a win in game number two. And again, they have all the pieces, as you were just mentioning. They have ways of being able to take down the Stormcallers comp. We saw some team fights going their way. And so if they can continue to keep this aggressive initiation that they had, I think their game plan was really solid. I just think that there was a few times that they missed on the execution, maybe around that tier 2 tower when they were pushing up with the Titan. And both the frontliners disconnected from the backliners, and then from that disconnect, they really weren't able to do a whole lot, and then they lost all three of their backliners just like that. And so if they can elect to not do something like that, maybe we see a more hybrid support coming out instead of just the more traditional Athena dashes in, confounds, pulls people in with the taunt, and then doesn't have any more CC to help peel after the fact. Maybe we got to see somebody that can be a little bit more hybrid, maybe like a Geb with like a Blink Cataclysm, and then you can turn around and use your Shockwave and your rollout and your Geb shields in order to protect your team after the fact. And so that'll be something that we'll have to see here in picks and bans for game number two. But I think Wild Inferno still have a chance at being able to win a game off of Stormcallers. And again, we've seen Stormcallers lose some games. They're undefeated set wise, but they have lost a few games in their sets. So they're not completely undying, and these matches aren't completely in their favor. And so Wild Inferno should still be feeling themselves that they still got a chance in this.
Yeah, I mean, Stormcallers can definitely bleed, and we saw, how Wild Inferno could turn that game in their favor. We're gonna look to do that here in game two. Picks and bans now underway. And Sun Wukong immediately gonna get taken off the board by Wild Inferno, who are now gonna be first pick themselves this time. Answered back once again by the Ganesh, taken away by Stormcallers.
We saw these bans in game number one. Not too much to add about them. Both incredibly strong picks, and so this isn't too surprising. Obviously, these teams don't want to play into these gods. Stormcallers banned Nesha game number one. Wild Inferno banned Sun Wukong in game number one. So makes sense for these two teams to continue up with these bans. Obviously, as of this moment, there wasn't a whole lot of picks on either side that either team felt like they had any issues with dealing with in this game, in this first game. It definitely felt like, again, it was just such an incredibly even game between these two teams. So I don't think there's anything necessarily that you have to swap up with your ban phase. I think you could just continue to do the bans you did in game number one and roll with it here in game number two.
That seems to be what both teams are going for so far. Bakasura and Thor taking off the board again. And I agree. I feel like there wasn't a standout pick that won Stormcallers that game. There was just good team play overall, and all the picks did what they were supposed to do. Plus, I mean, are you really going to ban something like an Artemis in the first phase? There's no shot that that happens, and bans will stay the same on both sides. Terra Kali taken off the board, and now it's just going to be, what Wild Inferno want to grab first overall for themselves. Is there anything that kind of to mind is what they should be jumping on?
Again, I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of issues in their first comp. Again, maybe just this Athena just wasn't bringing enough in these late game engagements, but in the early game, this Athena did numbers. So I don't even hate the Athena. I personally would have liked to have seen this Terra potentially get locked in, but they go ahead and ban that away from OLK over there in the support because is an incredibly strong Terra player. So makes
Hmm.
sense to just take that away from them. And we didn't even mention that in game number one, but OLK has done wonders on this pick for this team in previous sets. So always love to see that ban coming out against them. And a Horus lock in for Wild Inferno. And we see this Horus in support a lot.
Death comes
I
by
personally
night.
love the pick in solo, and I could see it potentially being flexed into the jungle as well. So a little bit of ambiguity for this Horus pick. And Stormcallers answer back with the Xbalanque once again. Looks strong in game number 1, so why go ahead and take that away from GettinCawky?
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, say the Stormcallers, and grab that ADC once again for themselves. And I'm glad you mentioned the Horus jungle, because I love Horus jungle and was definitely going to bring it up if you didn't. I'd love to see this go to the hands of Fiji, but I assume it's it's far more likely that this goes into support or even solo before we see it anywhere else.
Yeah, it's just such a strong support pick,
I
and
love
so it's not too surprising to see that over there. And it's got really great wave clear over there in the solo lane, so you don't really have to worry about being out pressured at all with the Horus. As soon as you get Golden Blade online, if you are playing it in the solo lane, you just shred the lane. You just shred the minions immediately, and you don't really have to worry about getting out pressured because you'll kill them before they touch your tower anyways. And a Fafnir pick coming out from Stormcallers. This is not a pick that we have seen, I want to say, at all. I don't think I've seen Fafnir at all this SDL season. And to me, drafting a Fafnir this early in the picks and bans tells me this is going to be another double Hunter composition coming out from Stormcallers.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it almost might be too early to draft the Fafnir because it kind of does show your hand with how good, Coerce is for the double ADC teams. You build a frenzy. I feel like that's the main reason to play Fafnir. So you're showing the hand that you want to pick up auto attack based gods, even if it isn't, double Hunter. If it's something
Let the
like,
hunt begin.
if the Kali or Bakasura was available, lots of options there. But Wild Inferno might seem to agree and say, we'll take the Artemis for ourselves instead. Gonna give that to Dracull, you have to imagine, with the Agni lock-in. So I didn't expect to see a mini meta around Artemis spawn here today. I gotta be honest with you, son.
Shrew, I was not expecting this either. This is pretty funny to me a little bit. I love the idea of they just showed their hand with their double Hunter. They already locked in one of the Hunters they locked in game number 1. They might just look to do the same in game number 2. So instead of even giving them the option on their second Hunter before we have the chance to ban out that same second Hunter, they just go ahead and take it away from them and go ahead and draft it for their own ADC over there in the long lane. And so I love to see this little mini meta get developed around this Artemis because, again, Hunter did very good job on this Artemis pick. We saw Tusky really get a lot of value in a lot of these engagements. That stun, being able to just roam around in these engagements, it was very impactful. And so I love to see Wild Inferno take that away from them because clearly this is something that they have been practicing for Stormcallers, something that they're comfortable with. So just deny them that. And a Fenrir pickup as well. We haven't even gotten to start talking about that as the second ban phase has started. But Fenrir, another pick that we haven't seen a ton of recently.
Yeah, Fenrir and Fafnir on the same team. I'm trying not to say that 3 times fast as we get into the game. But yeah, I like Fenrir. I feel like he brings a lot of stuff. And immediately my thought is interrupted by a Medusa ban. I know she got buffs in 10-7. Is she really worthy of a ban right now?
I personally think she is worthy of a ban right now. I have seen the impact of this goddess in Smite since the patch. She is very strong if you can get off to a little bit of a lead, and she's a pressure pick as well. So and not to mention, she's a little bit ability based. So clearly they want a mid ADC here because we're more than likely seeing this X ball over there in the long lane again. And so we see the Chiron and the Medusa bans, both these ability based hunters. So clearly Wild Inferno are sniffing the same things we're sniffing when it comes to this Fafnir lock-in as to where Stormcallers are looking towards. And so I love to see those two hunters getting banned away from them. And another pick, man, this set right here, another pick that we haven't gotten to see a ton of recently is this Shock and now a Bastet. We love to see these gods coming out. I
Wow.
love to see the large variety of gods in matches. And I think Bastet is a sleeper pick right now. I think more teams should be looking towards this jungle pick because it is very impactful in the early game.
I agree. I feel like Bastet is in a great spot, especially you know, she's gotten buffs recently, and then with the buff to Crusher that you mentioned, it feels so good. It just synergizes with her kit so well, with what her 2 does, just adding even more tick damage. I think she's in a great spot. And on the other side, I love Chuck. I feel like he's, I mean, he definitely falls into that kind of meme, right? For the first 12 minutes of the game, you are the strongest person on the map, and for the rest of the game, you're absolute garbage. But just win in the first 12 minutes. That's all you got to do. Just snowball enough in the first 12 minutes that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to be able to snowball hard enough into Indigo. Had a phenomenal game one in the short lane over there, and you've got to be worrying about it a little bit. But we'll be interested to see this shock pick. I, for one, also love the shock pick, and I think that this god can bring a lot. I do think that it is, as you said, very strongest person on the map in the early game, but falls off worse than any other god when it comes to late game. And we see the last pick coming out from Stormcallers, and they actually. It was all a ruse. They didn't want double Hunter. Why were you banning out Hunters in the second ban phase? They want to go ahead and locked in Discordia for their mid laner. And now with the strong man over there in the solo lane and potentially a Discordia passive on top of that, we might see a little bit of a flip when it comes to which solo laner is getting the pressure over there in the short lane.
Yeah, I mean, Cullen is a great solo laner who always does well in the laning phase, but Chalk just does so much damage, has so much survivability, and you give him a disco passive. I feel like, you know, Pyro instantly a problem over there in the solo lane. But I adore this matchup. You mentioned it. I love the just mix up in gods that we're seeing, you know, in these matches. I think this is going to be such a fun game too. And looking at both sides overall, is there a team you feel like got away with the better side of the draft?
God, don't ask me this question right now. I love both these comps. Both these comps look so good
Right?
to me, and they both like. I would love to play on either of these teams with these against each other because there's so many good things that both of the teams have that they can really, if they can get off, if either team can get off to a little bit of a lead, it kind of feels like there might be a little bit of snowball potential, especially on these jungle picks. And just the Bastet early game and the Fenrir early game, they both have such good damage output. And again, we saw Bastet get buffed, we saw Crusher get buffed, and so Bastet's items are getting buffed, which is always a good feeling. And so with that, you can start to see that maybe this god, like I had mentioned, was a bit of a sleeper pick that not a lot of people are looking at right now. And I think teams should be looking at this pick right now because of just how much it can do, but also Fenrir at the same time. When is Ragnarok ever bad? You know,
Yeah.
like it is an incredibly scary ultimate in the early game that can just pull you so far out of position, and you can just get brutalized after the fact, and there's not a whole lot you can do. And so it'll be very interesting to see when we get in the game.
Yeah, I mean it's dogs versus cats here between Stormcallers and Wild Inferno, between the Fenrir and the Bastet. I think we should hop into game 2 and find out which one is going to get the upper hand. Welcome into game 2 here between Wild Inferno and the Stormcallers. Stormcallers up 1-0 in the set so far. I'm going to be looking to put the set to bed in just 2 with a victory here, while the Wild Inferno are going to try their best to bounce back. And we talked about it a lot on the desk. There's a lot of really fun picks here in this lobby right now. A lot of picks we don't see too often. A lot of picks that I know that both of us really like. And I just, you know, what is standing out to you with builds here right off the bat as kind of noteworthy? Because I feel like we've talked about a lot of the different kind of god matchups so far.
I'm seeing a shock with Bluestone into a Cucullin, something I don't immediately like, but then we see a Transcendence start coming out from this shock, and I absolutely love that. Again, I love this god, and Transcendence just gives him so much power, gives him so much mana, and it can really just allow him to snowball. He is very tanky, he has amazing sustain in lane, and so because of that, he can really start to pressure out over there in the solo lane.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely going to bring some fireworks over there, especially since it looks like Indigo is opting for the Frostbound start that I've been seeing a little bit more of over in the solo lane. Do you like that pickup on Kakulin in particular, as Hunter gets the first blood in the mid lane with the help of Voltcha, and Venom ends up falling here really early into the game? Lots of pressure coming out of this Stormcallers team already.
Yeah, a lot of pressure is coming out right now, and this is something that we had to keep an eye out for, these junglers in the early game, because Fenrir can bring a lot of damage, and we just saw that Unchained came out right there, stunned out Agni, and then the Brutalize to follow up alongside some Hunter damage with the Disco pick is a lot of early game damage that this Agni does not have a ton of HP for.
There's the Unchained again, gets the stun onto the horse and lots of damage, but Voltcha might have ate a tower shot there because he took a lot of damage in return. So it seems like both members of the Wild Inferno duo lane will be able to live for the time being, but already Voltcha is so active on this map just 2 minutes in.
Yeah, their rotation right now is bringing a lot to the team, and this is something that's kind of scary again with this Fenrir pick. If they get off to a lead and start rotating around, it's something you've got to deal with and got to be worried about for sure.
Speaking of Voltcha, he's looking in the mid lane and even gets the beads out of Venom, who respects the damage coming out of this Fenrir and takes a lot of damage from Hunter. Poor Agni getting poked out here after falling for first blood. Might need to back again fairly soon.
Yeah, but looks like Voltcha's not done over here and is going to be looking to potentially get a pick over here. Does not have ultimate yet, but Brutalize is coming out.
It does do a lot of damage to Indigo, but he does have the transformation to answer back. And an early game Cullen that's transformed can kind of take almost any fight that he wants. Does turn around and stay aggressive because he knew he had Fiji on the way as well. It looks like there could be a blue buff invade attempt here by Fiji, but Voltcha turns around because the chalk is getting deleted. Cairo with a sliver of HP does manage to make it back under the tower and has the chalk sustain. Blue buff was secured as well, but look at the damage coming out of Fiji right now. There's so much this Bastet can do in the early game, but Hunter rotating over should spell the end of aggression coming out of the Bastet.
Yeah, Hunter making that rotation over there to the solo lane definitely helped with that, but Indigo might not be out of the woods yet with this blue buff almost taking the solo laner's life over there. A little bit scary, but the Bastet was around the corner to help take that aggro a little bit for themselves and not have a solo laner fall incredibly early. But a really back and forth engagement over there and no picks to be had, which is very surprising in this early game matchup.
Yeah, there was so much damage. So many people got low, just unable to finish those kills. Both teams playing very safe and able to escape from things. So we still just have one kill. What was that first blood that happened in mid lane just about a minute into the game? Otherwise, just kind of scrapping without too much. But Voltcha's over here in the duo lane again. He has the ultimate this time and picks up the Horus, who takes a lot of damage but has the dash, the double dash to get away. Transformation from Killer, but 2 ultimates used, and TeachLikeADad just kind of dashes out and lives for free.
We got to see just how effective this Horus pick can be in the support role. Supports are notoriously awful in the early game because if they get picked off, especially with a Ragnarok like we just saw, and get pulled out of position, they are usually as good as dead. But this pick, being able to have that leap and be able to leap towards the teammate and then use that dash on top of that as well was really impactful to save the life of the support. A great use of the kit and really good patience coming out as well, because had the shell up, it did not use it the entire time.
Wow, yeah, that is good kind of patience and control to not pop that relic there. I feel like if it was me, I would have been spamming it the moment I came out of the Ragnarok to make sure I lived, but good on Teach to make sure that they save that for more impactful team fights. We've seen Voltcha just everywhere on the map. It seems like nowhere is safe from this Fenrir right now, and Indigo also proves that solo lane is not safe for Cairo as he gets what looked to be a solo kill on the Chalk 5 minutes in. I thought Chalk was supposed to be at his strongest right now.
It definitely is supposed to be, but doesn't have Transcendence stacked yet. Only just now finished it after the death, but this blue buff's being looked at.
Oh, what a Bastet ult, gets the beads, snipes coming out from the Bastet there, and Voltcha not safe yet under the tower, but a good jump to get away from some of the damage, but is it enough to get away from all of it? No, Fiji will get credit for that kill, but he's instantly return killed. trading out jungle for jungle thanks to the tower getting the last hit onto the Bastet.
Yeah, now that this Transcendence is up for Cairo over here in the solo lane, is just going to be looking to try and stack it as much as possible and get that damage scaling up and that extra power and extra mana going as fast as possible. Plus the cooldown once it evolves. So going to be just looking to clear as much as possible. You saw just ignoring the solo lane matchup right there on Indigo. Meanwhile, HardKiller was looking at poking him out a little bit. He's just ignoring it and clearing the wave because that's what you got to do right now for this shock pick in order to get it online, especially after falling incredibly early to a solo kill over there in the short lane.
Yeah, definitely. Just focus on hitting that power spike and making yourself as strong as a Chalk should be in the early game. But purple buff invade successful here for the Stormcallers, making sure that Dracull does not get that buff for himself. And already we see Cairo he hasn't even finished stacking it yet, but here in the mid lane, it interrupts my thought because Hunter's so low, but the Apple of Discord plus good peel from Killer is enough to make sure that he gets out for the time being, but Teach is still around. This invade here needs to be a little bit careful. Has Fiji for backup, and red buff will get secured by Stormcallers. But it's just kind of constant action now on the map now that we've kind of crossed that super early game threshold.
Yeah, but this aggression over here in the solo lane still is not being led up. Indigo is getting a lot of value, but HardKiller ulted incredibly early and now is rotating in.
He is indeed. Voltcha's here, has the Ragnarok, but can't quite find the Chomp. And so Indigo will be able to live safely under his tower. More rotations coming out, but nothing coming of it.
Yeah, I do like the use of HardKiller's ultimate right there. Just immediately ult without them knowing that you're in your ult can be something that could be very scary as soon as you rotate in and you're already in that dragon form, being able to give both forms of stuns with your 3 and your 1 and be able to look for that stun and look for that pick immediately, especially if you were going to expel the Ragnarok as we just saw right there. And as we just saw over here in the long lane, they've been kind of left on an island a little bit for the most part, but it looks like GettinCawky is the one that's getting a little bit of a lead right now in both the stacks department and in the pressure department, as we can already see that that first Bastion is already getting knocked down very weak and might already fall for GettinCawky. And meanwhile, Artemis just had the back over there.
Yeah, and you know, something I've seen GettinCawky do time and time again in these games that I know you are someone that does it, and it should be illegal, is starting item before starter. It just doesn't look right over there. He picked up the Devos before the Gilded Arrow. I'm shaking my head right now.
Hey, I don't do it that often, okay? I will say that I am guilty of this from time and time again. I am a little bit guilty of this, but it's not that much of a gripe because, again, GettinCawky, you can see just how effective it can be. 2-level lead coming out right now for this X-Ball over here. Well, 1 level, as we just saw Dracull go ahead and tick over right there. But now with another purple buff invade coming out, and this is something that we might see time and time again as GettinCawky continues to get support over here one way or another, either by the actual support or by the jungler in this case, to look for these purple invades. And Dracull's been just left on an island, and unfortunately, TeachLikeADad just hasn't been around for these purple buff respawn timers, and actually might not be around for too long.
Yeah, he's around to be underneath the tower, gets picked up by the Ragnarok, hit by the apple, but is juking quite a bit. Voltcha will get the credit for that kill, though, and the support does end up falling. And I agree, I feel like Dracull leaving a late game Artemis on an island is an interesting decision. What do you think the game plan for Wild Inferno is here by doing that, or is it more they're just trying to keep up with the rotations from the Stormcallers?
I definitely think it's that they're just trying to keep up with the rotations around the map. TeachLikeADad has had to be around this solo side a few times from some of these team fights that have been occurring over here. We almost saw one right there as well, as Indigo's being looked at and HardKiller's over here in the jungle very deep. And so because of that, all this pressure that's over here on the right-hand side of the map, that Wild Inferno support has to also respect it a little bit and try and help out on that side of the map as best they can. But GettinCawky's dashing in.
He does so much damage with those branching bolas. The Rising Jaguar dash also does quite a bit. But look at Dracull's finally getting some support over here. And now GettinCawky could be in trouble. Has to use the beads, but will get hit by the Bastet ult and picked straight up. He has the dash, though, and does make it underneath the tower while Indigo gets a solo kill elsewhere. But can Kawky get away? It doesn't look like it, and he will end up falling. The same time, though, Voltcha answered back with a kill on to Dracull, and will pick up TeachLikeADad, a double kill for the Fenrir, and they are looking for more. Fiji has to use the jump over the wall, should be able to make it out safely. Venom gets low as well. It seems like Stormcallers are just getting aggressive all across the map at the same time.
Yeah, we can see the little bit of a jungle difference coming out right here. We can see 1 level lead coming out from Voltcha, but 4 kills as well going the way of Voltcha. And a lot of this is stemming from the fact that Bastet kind of has to go Transcendence. And because Bastet kind of has to, you aren't nearly as effective as the jungler on the opposite side if they elect not to. We can actually see that there are 2 items going the way of Voltcha, 2 and then some, as we can see the tier 1 coming out for the Morningstar. And on the opposite side for this Bastet, might be the same level right now, but doesn't have nearly the same amount of items, and the stacks are not finished yet for this Transcendence, so it doesn't even feel like a full item quite yet coming out for this jungler. We do see the Soul Eater backed and purchased. I would like to see that tier 2 potentially get backed for a lot sooner, but Beacon gets uncontested for Wild Inferno, which is kind of crazy to think about, as we saw like around a 2-minute long fight coming out in game number 1 over that Beacon spawn, and now we just see them completely just go, you guys can have it.
Yeah, definitely a change in mentality and game plan, because you're right, that first Beacon fight was extremely long. But Wild Inferno will say thank you very much and pick that one up for themselves and try to, you know, kind of keep themselves at a state of even, because once again, 12 minutes into the game, there's not even 1,000 gold between these two teams right now. Fights might be going one way or the other, but look at that, 98 separating these squads as a whole.
Once again, we are seeing something very similar to what we were seeing in game number 1, but...
Uh-oh. Lots of damage on the Cairo, but he will be safe for the time being. Fiji wants to dive this one out, but Dracull does not have that ability. Uses the ultimate, but the tick damage is too much. And GettinCawky will get his first kill of the game now, 1-1-1 on this Xibalanque, and the tier 1 tower has fallen as well for Wild Inferno over there in the dual lane. Stormcallers pulling out just the slightest of lead now.
Not too much of a lead. That tower going their way is kind of helping with that lead a little bit. Again, we saw that first Beacon go the way of Wild Inferno, completely uncontested. But we are seeing a lot of pressure on the flip side of the map over here in the solo lane, and Cairo's going to have to use that ultimate to just try and buy time away from this Cacullen. This Cacullen is a menace over there in the solo lane right now.
He has that Frostbound Hammer build that I was speaking about earlier, and it's just working for him right now. Has a 2-level lead over a Chalk. I feel like that's not something that you get to say you have very often in the early game, to be up ahead of a Chalk in the solo lane. So, I mean, Indigo's just playing this so well right now.
Yeah, and this isn't the best look when Stormcallers are locking in the Stormcaller himself, Shock, and he's getting completely out-pressured over there in the solo lane. It's not a feels-good moment when that's your team name, but needless to say, their team is still very much in this. They do, in fact, still have a lead, so even though the solo lane doesn't seem to be going the way of the Stormcaller himself, the game, as of right now, is tending into that direction. But this, once again, we saw in game number 1 just how effective Indigo could be on the solo lane. And this might be something that they're going to have to find a way to deal with here in game number 2. And Voltcha is really looking for Dracull, and Dracull is playing this relatively safely right now.
They step up a little bit, but seems like they just couldn't be on the same side of that rock for at any point there. Voltcha will just end up backing after making sure that Dracull is uncomfortable even near his tier 2 tower over there on that Artemis pick, who's now around 3 levels down from what GettinCawky has. And it looks like Stormcallers are going to use the advantage that they have over there in that dual lane to start up this Gold Fury, burning it relatively quickly. No one from Wild Inferno is going to be able to step up to contest it. So first Gold Fury of the game goes the way of Stormcallers.
Dracull knew that they were doing that, but if you look at where the wave pressure is over on the left-hand side, you could not even step up, but who shouldn't be stepping up is Fiji.
Oh, Ragnarok comes out, but the Bastet all too immune. It actually traps Voltcha under the tower, call an ambulance, but not for me. Dracull gets a big kill for himself there by rotating over with that kill onto Voltcha. And the Stormcallers just sent packing underneath their own tier 1 towers. A 4-man rotation towards the mid lane, make sure things go their way.
What an outplay from Fiji. That was fantastic. Perfect timing of the ultimate to immune the damage and the grab of Ragnarok. And then as soon as Ragnarok ended, because you immuned it, immediately gets slowed and pulled into place right there under that tower. And Voltcha, unfortunately, not having either ability used to be able to escape, had to expel the beads to try and save the life. But unfortunately, just to no avail, and a kill going the way of Wild Inferno. A great play out of that Bastet from a very aggressive play coming out from Voltcha, but it seemed like everything should have been going their way in that engagement right there. But a really, really great use of that ultimate from Bastet in order to say no, basically.
Yeah, and I feel like it's got to feel great for Dracull to make that rotation, having been stuck underneath towers the whole game, to get that kill for yourself, kind of pull yourself back into this game just a little bit, as Hunter needs to use the golden apple just to make sure no one chases under tower. It's getting a little low over there. Voltcha's again aggressively positioned in this mid lane, but will just jump away for the time being. Wild Inferno also got the Pyromancer off the back into that fight to add to more things, and they're going to look to do even more in this mid lane as Voltcha gets absolutely melted by Venom on this Agni, who's a name we have not mentioned too much in this game, but he has the Spear of Deso, he has the Charon's coin built, and it seems like he's really starting to swing now.
Yeah, we've been seeing just the amount of poke that he has been able to bring out here in the mid lane has just been something that Hunter's been kind of struggling to deal with a little bit, and it is also playing incredibly safe at the same time. 0-1 for the mid Agni, but I don't think that's a great way to represent just how impactful Venom has been so far this game. There's been a lot of poke coming out from this god, and poke adds up, and TKOs, they're walking to base and not getting farm, and you're getting farm in the process, so you can start to develop a bit of a lead. Hunter's doing a fantastic job of staying in this, but Venom is doing a very good job in a lot of these engagements here in the mid lane.
He definitely is. And I mean, the later the game goes, the more terrifying Agni becomes, because you can just get stunned out and absolutely deleted by his own setup and his own damage. Interesting to see where he takes the rest of his build and what he can do with this pick. But a blink into the mid lane does force the dash out of Venom, but Voltcha unable to find too much off the back of that. Will expend the relic to try and find something. Now a little bit more rotations toward this right side of the map, where Indigo has sustained this 2-level lead over Cairo.
Cairo just used the Storm Call in order to try and secure that silver buff, and did not.
Definitely could be trouble.
And now, if there's pressure over here, it's not.
A lot of damage going that way, but it won't be anything eventually. Just backing out. The Darkest of Nights was used, but Dracull is in the one in trouble. Uses Tusky to buy some space, and we'll be able to live underneath the tier 2 tower for the time being.
Yeah, great way to be able to disengage right there and not fall. But Voltcha's looking for Venom, and a great beads and a great dash. It saved the life of the mid laner right there.
Definitely, there's just little 1v1 and little scraps happening all over the place. The support and Cairo just kind of hitting each other, pillow fighting in the jungle, but it looks like Cairo's getting the better end of it for the time being with the extra damage that he has. I don't exactly know what the point of this little skirmish is. Will end up just leading to nothing, I guess, just wanting to limit test both the damage and tankiness they were thinking around that blue buff there.
Yeah, they're just having a little bit of fun. At the end of the day, they're just having some fun, but somebody that's not having fun is Huntor getting absolutely eviscerated by the Agni bombs. Oh my goodness, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, where did his health bar go? That was just instant burst coming out, and they will not allow Cairo to rotate in, because they're going to take this Primal Fury now, or at least look at it with that pick onto Hunter, who's still down for the next 23 seconds. They'll pop the Frenzy, They have a lot of damage. Fiji's on zone duty right now, and no one from Stormcallers, save maybe Chiro, is able to get in there and will not be able to make it in time. Wild Inferno just kind of getting themselves a burst pick in mid and lead it straight to a burst on a Gold Fury.
Yeah, and go ahead and just take that objective for themselves. But meanwhile, the team fight here in the mid lane might actually be going the opposite direction. Voltcha's going in.
Voltcha picks up one, but has to dash away as Dragon Form is used as well. But Chiro's taking a lot of damage. He does get that ultimate off and do quite a bit in return. GettinCawky will get the kill onto Dracull, but Voltcha is so low, has the leap again. But look at Indigo. He's doing so much damage, forces out the Aegis onto GettinCawky, but it's Killer who gets picked up by the Bastet, but Venom's damage is too much to deal with. And now HardKiller will end up falling, a double kill for the Agni. Again, it's a back and forth fight, but it seems like at the end of it, Wild Inferno come away with an advantage, and they're going to start up this Pyromancer, and it's just Chiro and Hunter nearby. Seems like maybe that's enough to get them off of it, except for it might have been a bait as Indigo does so much to Hunter, is diving underneath the tower, and Fiji will get credit for that kill. Now just the chalk left to try and turn things back around, but it's getting shredded. Ends up falling at the same time. Wild Inferno are just running the show right now in mid lane.
Yeah, Wild Inferno, it looked like that engagement there in the mid lane, it looked like it was really going the way of Stormcallers with GettinCawky rotating in, and this Xbalanque is outputting an immense amount of damage. We saw just how much that was, but everybody managed to get out with 1 HP, and then once we saw Indigo show up and really start to turn the tides of this fight, it just swung completely in the opposite direction for Wild Inferno. Pyromancer going their way, Tier 1 tower and mid going their way, and seems like everything's starting to, you know, the wheels are starting to turn a little bit over here for Wild Inferno, and things are starting to go their way, as this is the first kind of real lead that we've seen all game. We saw like a 1K lead for Stormcallers at one point, but 1K lead isn't really that much. Granted, a 3K lead isn't a ton more, but it is notable to say the least. So we get to start to see who can start setting the pace a little bit. It seems like it's Wild Infernos.
Yeah, and they're definitely firing on a lot more cylinders now. Things are turning in their favor. They're going to grab the second, or the third beacon, excuse me, the final beacon for themselves, which will unleash the Titan down the mid lane at the same time. I didn't quite realize we were 23 minutes into this game already. Like, just so much has been happening. That means, you know, Fire Giant is something that is going to be thought about and looked at here soon. With the Titans walking down mid lane in particular, do you want to see the teams kind of fight with their Titans as we saw in game 1, or maybe use it as a distraction to pick something else up?
Well, if we think about game number 1, again, the Stormcallers did a fairly good job of being able to defend against that in game number 1, and it's kind of a similar story where Wild Inferno have a little bit of a pressure lead over Stormcallers as the Titans are walking up the mid lane, and Stormcallers did a really great job of defending after Wild Inferno took the Titan and then marched up with it a little bit. But the team fight kind of went the tail end for Stormcallers, so maybe we'll have to see a little bit of a different story here for Wild Inferno here in game number 2, and maybe they elect to push it again as they did in game number 1, and it seems like they kind of want to, but maybe they should just be walking over towards this Gold Fury that's going to be, or this Primal Fury that's going to be spawning over here instead.
Yeah, interesting to me that they popped the Frenzy there to burn down the opposing Titan, and I thought maybe that would be a go button for a fight, but they opt instead to just back out and kind of walk towards the Primal Fury, but it's still not on the map. It will just spawn now, but Voltcha wants to take the fight now, jumps in, does have to use the beads and the Ragnarok to pick one up, but here Chiro is the one in the most trouble. Where is Chalk's health bar? It is deleted. Dracull gets that kill, but Indigo falls at the same time. The Bastet ult does pull in the Fafnir, who takes a lot of poke from the Agni, but is able to retreat underneath the tower. These Artemis autos are starting to shred though, and the tier 2 tower will fall to the hands of Wild Inferno. So they get both towers there in the mid lane. They get a couple picks, and all they lose is Indigo on the back end.
Yeah, traded solo for solo, which for how much of a lead Indigo has had this game isn't exactly the best feeling, but if they get this Primal Fury in addition to that tier 2 tower that they took there in the mid lane, it'll definitely feel good for Indigo, and he'll think it was a worthwhile trade. But there is contention.
Stormcallers not giving this one up. Hunter will get a kill, and Stormcallers also get the objective. They're charging forward here. Dracull gets deleted as well, and now it's Venom who's on the run. Looks like Stormcallers will stop the chase, but they get 2 picks and steal the objective. Really worth it at all for the Stormcallers at that, or for the Wild Inferno at that point. Excuse me.
No, it is not, because now we actually see that Stormcallers have all well caught up when it came to the lead that Wild Inferno had, thanks to that objective steal coming out for them. And now it seems like it's all even across the board again. The only thing that's standing between Stormcallers and Wild Inferno from being dead even in the game is kind of this tier 1 tower in mid. When it comes to objective play, at least. But we do see the the Pyromancer is up right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Stormcallers just go ahead and take this, because most of Wild Inferno is not around it right now, and we're going to see just that happening over there up by the Pyro.
Indigo is kind of local and is walking in this direction, but it cannot get there quick enough. Stormcallers will pick up another Pyromancer for themselves here, and you were mentioning how they had, pulled themselves back to a state of even, and at one point while you were talking, the gold difference between the teams was 6. I would definitely say that would mean they are back in this game with that Pyromancer pulled themselves just a little bit in the lead. So much like game number 1, kind of back and forth here between these two squads. We're at the 27-minute mark, though. At what point do you think either of these teams decides to look towards the biggest objective on the map?
It might just be right around now. We see Fiji de-warding right now over there on that objective, and we do see some decent amount of wards in hand for both teams right now, and we're starting to see this posture come around as well, and Voltcha's stepping up a little bit, doing a little bit of de-warding. Thought maybe was going to be looking to leap around the corner and get active before his team, but elects to just de-ward right now, and it looks like that's what the name of the game is between these two teams. They are just trying to see who has pick control with vision. But both teams are here, 5-man strong for each, and they're both posturing, looking for a pick.
They are. Indigo gets rooted, but is safe enough for the time being. And as for vision control, at the moment it goes the way of Wild Inferno, but the fight might not, as Ragnarok is used and GettinCawky deletes the Cucullin. Voltcha has to jump away as he's taking so much damage, but in the backline goes the Shock, and that leads to another kill going to GettinCawky. He picks up one for himself as well, and that is 3 down on the side of Wild Inferno. Could be more, as Fiji is under a lot of aggression, and you're running the wrong way, buddy. Your base is in the opposite direction, just trying to make it out, and will be able to on the Bastet, mobile enough to make it out. Venom was forced all the way back towards the Phoenix. Stormcallers kind of run away with that fight. They're going to start up this Fire Giant. Doesn't look like anybody from Wild Inferno is going to be able to step up to contend it.
Voltcha did a fantastic job in that engagement. You saw him leap into 3 people in the Fire Giant, and all eyes were on Voltcha, because again, if there's a Fenrir leaping in on 3 members, you know the rest of the team is following up. But no, the rest of the team was not with Voltcha. The rest of the team was looking at Indigo, who was off by themselves over by the Pyromancer, and because of that, because of how effective this Cucullin has been, as soon as that player fell, it was just a go button for the rest of the Stormcallers, and we saw a fantastic storm call from the man himself, Shock, for Cairo, managing to hit 3 people with that knock-up silence with the storm call ability, and it was just all the members heard that call, and all the members listened to it, and they all followed up, and a lot of picks went their way, and the Fire Giant was one of them. First Fire Giant going the way of Stormcallers, and now we start to see another lead, this time in the way of Stormcallers.
Yeah, they are definitely the ones in control right now, and an Oni Fury would add to that even more. We see them grouping towards this side of the map. Teach is backing up on this Horus, but Oni Fury just absolutely getting deleted by this Stormcallers comp. They'll pick that up for themselves, so they're going to have pressure in all the lanes. The Stormcallers look to start pushing down some of these towers. How do you favor the defense. I was gonna ask you, but if they want to take this fight outside of the tower, they do a lot of damage to Cairo, but Kaki's here, and he gets a pick onto Fiji. Tusky comes out, but it doesn't matter because Voltcha will get another pick as well onto Indigo. Wild Inferno wanted to take this fight, and they might even lose a fourth one. Dracull has to use the Aegis to live. Siege defense doesn't really matter if you only have 3 people left.
Yeah, I had a deja vu moment from game number 1. We saw the Fire Giant get taken by Stormcallers a little bit before the 30-minute mark, and now we see them walking up mid lane 5 members strong looking at this mid bird.
They are gonna melt it very quickly. It's already gone as Cairo is buying a lot of space. Voltcha jumps into the backline as well. This Stormcaller squad, once they have a Fire Giant around their waist, just seems like a completely different team.
Yeah, the button is go, 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 and all members know it well. As soon as they pick up that Fire Giant, they start looking at the objectives. They decided to take a detour to Gold Fury this game, unlike game number 1, but they do make their travel down the mid lane, collecting all of the objectives on their way. And once they did that, they actually said, "Hey, we've still got this this Fafnir ultimate, and we got this Coerce. So let's just all group up for this Coerce and take this right bird as well, and then we'll take our Pyromancer that's free, uncontested, and then we'll go ahead and spend all the gold that we just earned across the map." And so with that, massively developed out of what felt like nowhere, and it felt like there was only around like a 2 to 3K lead from Stormcallers before this Fire Giant, but now we can see it is a 10K gold lead over the span of less than 3 minutes.
Yeah, that is absolutely insane. I mean, look at the builds coming out of Stormcallers. They're done. They're all finished up. Starters, last items, all completed. While on the side of Wild Inferno, they still need a couple items built for a few members. Support doesn't even have a tier 1 for their last item. The gold definitely still matters here at this 32-minute mark. The Stormcaller is going to be grouping over in this left side to try and take this last bird.
And I don't know if this is a group that they want to know. I don't think they realize that Cairo and Voltcha are lurking in the jungle right now, but they do end up catching a whiff of that shock rain in the jungle and realize that that's not something that they want to be anywhere near, and they retreat back to their left Phoenix. But Fire Minions are pouring in both the side lanes, and Stormcallers are just waiting for those to start pushing in. They're probably going to push in with this next minion wave over here on the left-hand side once they have all the pressure across the map from those other Fire Minion waves.
Yeah, they can afford to be patient because someone from Wild Inferno has to deal with those minions, or the Titan's just going to take a bunch of free damage. And that's exactly what they're doing, playing the long con here, just staring at them on the Phoenix line to make sure they know exactly where every member of the Stormcallers is, and they will go in now. The bird is deleted, and Dracull could be next. He takes a lot of damage, and he will end up falling to Huntor. The rest of this Wild Inferno squad trying to back up, but Teach will not be able to make it out of there. Voltcha leaps into the throne room, and the Titan already at 3/4 HP from minions alone. A good knock-up from Cullen, but it might not be enough. Venom gets 1 kill though onto Voltcha, but look at the Titan's HP bar. It is so low. The Titan with a sliver, and that is going to be a Stormcallers game and set win here over Wild Inferno. Well, the Stormcallers remain undefeated, and you mentioned at the top of the broadcast they needed to do it in a 2-0. Well, they delivered, locking in their mascot's namesake in the chalk and getting that victory over Wild Inferno.
They're doing a fantastic job doing so. Now they are top of the division here in the Divine Division. They are the #1 team, but we still have to wait and see as far as Kingslayer's game to see if they will remain for very long or if Kingslayers will take back the throne. as the #1 team, as they still have their match this week yet left to play. And so if they end up winning the set, they will be back in the lead. But if they end up losing the set 2-0, then they will, then the Stormcallers will continue to have the crown going into the next week after. But a fantastic game coming out from Stormcallers, a little bit rocky there in the mid game, an incredibly great showing coming out from Wild Inferno as well. They did a fantastic job of, again, having a bit of a lead there. The game was incredibly even, just like game #1. They had a great showing, but with the lead, a little bit of a lead they had a few little misplays there in the late game, and those misplays turned into a Stormcallers victory for both game #1 and for game #2. But if I'm Wild Infernos, I still feel very happy about my performance for that set. This is one of the teams that is top of the standings right now. You're the #4 seed in the standings, so this is a little bit of an uphill battle, but did a great showing in this uphill battle and showed that they are definitely somebody that can be in contention for that #1 spot in the division.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like the 2-0 does not show how close this set was as a whole. Great team play out of both of them, but there can only be one winner, and today that is Stormcallers. Thanks for joining us here on the SDL. That's going to do it for us today. Once again, I've been DoctahShru, joined by Suun, the ever wonderful Nooblet on production. Have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you in the next one.